Hello, I'm Stephanie Isaacson from the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission Implementation Taskforce. I'd like to introduce to you Kerry Markoulli. Kerry is an Assistant Secretary at the Department of Finance and Deregulation and is responsible for a number of financial policies, including the Commonwealth Grants Framework. Kerry, would you like to tell us about the work of finance that will have great benefit to the not-for-profit sector?
The first area relates to improving or streamlining procurement, which is essentially the Commonwealth purchasing things. The second area relates to improving grants agreement, which is essentially the Commonwealth funding things. And the third area where we've already completed some work is around financial reporting, particularly for grants recipients. It's probably useful for me to start with a bit of context around procurement or our purchasing. This is an area where there's a high volume of low value transactions. So last year on AusTender, which is the government reporting website for contracts, 75% of our contracts were under 80,000, and yet that was only about 3% of value. So there's a lot of effort going into small contracts where the government doesn't spend a lot of money. Another area that we're doing some work relates to improving grants arrangements. Our grants activity relates to billion-dollar contracts through to one-off community type grants of a small value. So we're also doing some work to improve that sector. We've received quite a lot of feedback from the not-for-profit sector that grants arrangements are quite cumbersome and that they would like to see some improvements in that area. So we're also doing a project to improve grants agreements with a view to providing some guidance to agencies, to the sector, and also producing, if you like, a model grants agreement or a template to make it easier for agencies to provide funding to the sector. The third area that we're undertaking work relates to financial reporting. The Commonwealth, together with the states, made a commitment that we would look at some standardisation around the financial information we collect. So the Commonwealth and the states have agreed to implement the Standard Chart of Accounts, which is essentially a list of common terms on financial information. So a data dictionary about financial information, and finance is also doing some work in that area, if you like, as the first step towards improved financial information for grants recipients.
Could you tell us more about those projects?
The procurement project is actually quite well progressed. We actually released the basic contract suite, which is the documents available for agencies about how to conduct a procurement, as well as things like a model contract. That was released a couple of months ago, and in fact we've already done an update on that basic contract suite. Essentially it is simplified information. It should make contracting with the Commonwealth much simpler and easier. It should save a lot of time. Those documents were developed in consultation with a range of sectors, particularly small business had quite a bit of say. So although it's not a project specific to the not-for-profit sector, it's a project that will benefit anyone who is wanting to sell goods or services or to the Commonwealth, so anyone that the Commonwealth is purchasing from. The Grants Template project is at a much earlier stage. That only commenced earlier this year. We've been working with agencies, particularly those that undertake a range of granting activities in the community sector, so agencies such as Department of Family and Community Services, Department of Health, Attorney General's Department. We're looking at what agreements they're already doing, but we're also looking at what's best practice, so some work that the Victorian Government's doing with a view to developing a grant agreement for low risk grants. And you might be wondering what low risk grants are. From our perspective, it's not just about money. Things like the nature of services, the experience of the service provider. Of course, money is a factor, but it's only one of the factors. So even things like the duration of the agreement are things that we want agencies to take into account if they're going to use the low risk grants agreement. We're looking at hopefully that agreement being available from mid next year onwards. So the procurement work, you should already be starting to see some changes and improvements in Commonwealth procurement, and from mid next year onwards you should be seeing some improvements around the way Commonwealth enters into grants with the sector and other providers. On the grants project, once we have some model agreements, if you like, or even at this stage where we're about to finalise what we think should be in the grants agreement, we're going to look at having some round tables with the sector to get their views about how the grants agreements they currently have affect them, and what they think would be the minimum, if you like, clauses to include.
Could you tell us who will be involved in these projects?
More broadly, we do actually work with the sector and with agencies about improving procurement processes. So where we undertook some work around, say, the disability sector last year, where there was an opportunity for us to work both with agencies and also with the sector about improving agencies' understanding of what the sector could provide, as well as improving the understanding of the sector about how to put in tenders and to interact with government. Not only do we need to develop some guidance for agencies about how to use the grants template, but also for the not-for-profit sector about how they can, what the clauses mean and how they can work with agencies around encouraging them to use the templates. I should say that the grants project as well is not sector specific. We feel that a good grants agreement is a good grants agreement regardless of whether we're providing a grant for solar energy, for community care, for child care services. So I hope there will definitely be an opportunity for the sector to work with us. Finance is doing work both in the grants area and in the procurement area that will benefit the not-for-profit sector. We're trying to simplify and, if you like, streamline our procurement arrangements, and hopefully our grants project will do the same when it comes to entering into smaller or lower risk grants agreements with Commonwealth. Also through the Standard Chart of Accounts project, I guess that's the first step in improving some of the financial information and introducing some consistency in the questions that agencies might be asking of the sector.